I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoops, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards destination manifestation.
Take a step back for the ones who
All right, welcome back. I am Brittany Hoops, and this is Destination Manifestation. So, last night, I want to tell you a little story. Last night, I was watching a documentary series, I guess you could call that. It was only 3 episodes, very limited series on Amazon Prime. And it's called Desperately Seeking Soulmate. So, like escaping the twin flames universe. Okay, so this is not a Marvel movie. It was a documentary that I have a lot of thoughts about, many of which I will not share right now since this is not what the podcast is about today. But it was essentially about this guy, this spiritual teacher, which I just hate. It's always spirituality that gets these freaking documentaries made about them. It's never golf or anything like that, right? No, the cult leaders don't ever pick, truck driving as their cult. It's always got to be spirituality for some reason. And he's basically like this cult leader that would tell people what to do and like try to convince them to change their gender and like all this really crazy, stupid stuff. Very, very harmful. And it got me thinking. And honestly, like I literally cried. I don't know how many people cry at this documentary. I cried because it just made me so sad for the people that like fell into his trap in the name of wanting to feel better and wanting to, they didn't call it manifest, but like, and thank God they didn't. I don't want them to tarnish the manifestation name, but like they were wanting, these people would come to them because they wanted a certain person to fall in love with them. And this guy was guaranteeing that he could help them make this certain person fall in love with them. And it just got me thinking about, like, it made me so sad because I'm like, here are people who wanted help feeling better, who wanted to manifest something in their life. They thought it needed to come through the form of this specific person, but really they just wanted love. And it just made me sad to see them being taken advantage of by this guy when like there's so many other beautiful resources out in the world that they could have discovered that would have actually, led to what they were actually desiring. And it made me think of some of the red flags that you might see and what I wish maybe they knew at the time, what might be red flags. And so here are the main takeaways as a trained, certified hypnotherapist and a trained, certified life coach. Here are some red flags that the people who fell victim to this guy were not aware of, but I want to make sure that you're aware of, okay? And this could apply to coaches, could apply to hypnotherapists, it could apply to any sort of teachers, even medical therapists, anybody who's here to help your mental well-being and your spiritual well-being. This is what you need to be aware of. First of all, anyone who claims that they can help you manifest a specific person or really like anything, like a specific outcome, no, red flag, red flag, red flag. Because here's the thing. We don't, and it goes absolutely against one of the core tenets of manifestation, which is we don't get to determine the how. The universe determines the how. So here's the difference. He was claiming that he would guarantee you could manifest a specific person to fall in love with you. Whereas manifestation would say, let me help you manifest your soulmate or true love or a loving partnership, right? You see how that's more expanded and that could take so many different forms. So this is why we always focus on manifestation in terms of a desired feeling or a desired generalized outcome, knowing that the details of those things are left up to the universe. Oftentimes I'll tack on to my affirmations, this or something better. So who are we to decide the specifics of these things, right? When the universe ends up having the perspective that we just don't have. Here's another red flag you should be aware of. No one should tell you what to do. Any teacher, hypnotherapist, coach, their only role is to help you find the answers within yourself. Do you see that distinction? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I work with clients. They're like, Brittany, should I leave him? Or what should I do? Or, they're wanting the answer from me because we've been trained to think that that's like easier. We don't have to think through the hard parts. We oftentimes don't have the self-confidence to think that we do have the answers. But my whole goal, and I will never express my personal opinion to any client, and sometimes it frustrates my clients, but I won't do it because my whole goal is to teach you how to find those answers within yourself. Okay? Because remember, you ask, the universe provides. It is done. It's done. Like, how exciting is that? Cosmically, quantumly, there is a timeline that exists where your manifestation is done. So the only one in the entire existence that knows how to go down your unique path is your intuition, your inner voice. It's the universe. The universe has created it. Therefore, the universe is the only one who knows how to experience it. And that's what's kind of funny. Here we're out here like looking for other people and other coaches. And I mean, I'm a hypnotherapist and coach. I know this, right? But the best coach you could ever have is your intuition, which is in your back pocket. That's always with you because they're the only one that's going to know the path that's unique for you. Your route is unlike anyone else's. Now, this doesn't mean you can't learn skills that will help you along that route. You may need to learn some skills. This doesn't mean that you can't be inspired by other people's journeys. That's perfectly fine and okay too. But no one can give you that journey, right? And so if you're having trouble tapping into that part of yourself that can hear yourself, a lot of times we've stuffed it down so much. We've repressed it. We've looked to other people for the answers rather than listening to ourselves, that it's barely a whisper. And so if you need help turning up the volume on your intuition, a coach and a hypnotherapist can be very helpful for you to help you reconnect. But they themselves are not going to have your answers because you have your answers. And so I just think this documentary, I wanted to just like talk to you guys about this because I feel like it was such a good reminder, even for me. And even as I think about like my own business, I've been so blessed to manifest you all. Like I've been so blessed to manifest so many amazing clients and listeners of the show. And like, I will never take that for granted. But lately I've been feeling like this bigger calling to do something big and like disruptive. I've always had this deep inner knowing, even before I ever started my business, like years ago, that it's like, oh, my path is not going to be traditional. Like I'm going to do something big. I'm meant to do something like really big. And it's funny because I kind of thought that Big Brother was that thing. Big Brother was the big thing, but that feeling has still not gone away. And so I don't think it's fulfilled yet. And it's frustrating because it's like, okay, well, what is it? If it's big and no one else has done it before, I can't look to other people to tell me what it is. I have to look within. And it's a good reminder of that. At the end of the day, it's all about tuning into your intuition and tuning into the intuition, listening, and then not just listening and putting that kind of like in the back of your mind. It's actually taking action on those things. I can't tell you how many times I'm working with clients where they're like, oh yeah, earlier this year, my intuition said I should do this, but I haven't done anything about it. And it's like, why? It's because we've been so trained to look for other people to give us the answers. We don't trust ourselves. And so it's building up that integrity and that trust within yourself. And so what action do you need to take? What is the next step that your intuition guides you to? Ask your intuition, what do you need from me next? God, source, universe, inner being, what do you need from me next? It's kind of like you playing this like blindfold game, right? Where you have the blindfold on and the universe is like, take 3 steps forward. The universe knows where you need to go. You listen and you got to take the next steps. And it's scary because you can't see in front of you. And you're like, am I going to fall? But you have to trust. And only those answers can come within you. No guru, no teacher, no cult leader is going to tell you what that is. It's about listening to yourself. And you have to do something. The universe isn't just going to teleport you there. You have to take the actions. You have to listen and then take action on it. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into here today, okay? My Big Brother 24 Festy Bestie is officially becoming my Manifesty Bestie for this episode. And seriously, guys, this conversation is such a gem because Michael Bruner, you probably know him from Big Brother. He is a comp beast. I should know his stats. You guys probably know better than I do. But I think he tied. Oh, I don't want to misspoke or speak. I should know this. Sorry, Michael. I should know this off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure he tied for the most competition wins ever on Big Brother. He won quite a few competitions. And can I just set the record straight that we became friends before we had a final 2 before he had ever won a single competition. So I am not a competition gold digger. I just found a friend who ended up being very talented. And we both had our own unique talents, which made us such a fun duo. To tell you the truth, I was kind of nervous about asking him to come onto the podcast. I didn't know if he'd want to come on my show and talk. I mean, I knew he'd want to talk to me since we're like best friends, but like, I didn't know if he'd want to talk about this subject. But I love this conversation because I got to see a whole other side of him, which you'll get to see here too. And so we learn what it means to have a comp beast mindset, how you can overcome disappointment when you're pursuing your goals, and maybe that how that you envision doesn't turn out the way you initially thought. And we also learn about the power of visualization and like so much more. It's really a treasure trove. So let's go ahead and dive right in.
Yeah, take a step back for the ones who can't be
Michael,
back.
bestie, welcome to Destination Manifestation. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited. Any opportunity or chance to talk to you. I know we talk all the time, but still, this is fun.
Yeah, I love it.
I will admit I am very excited for this conversation. And also this is not the kind of conversations we ever had in the house, really.
Right. Yeah, I know.
I know. And this is what's kind of funny is I didn't even really know, of course we'll talk all about it, but I didn't know where you were on the manifestation, spectrum of things. We didn't really talk about this in the house. We were always talking about, game and all this stuff. And, I'm excited to kind of hear your perspective. So, let me just ask you, manifestation, tell me a little bit more about that. How did you first learn about it? What's your relationship with it? Let's just get a baseline. How are you feeling?
Yeah, so it's funny. I think the first time I was ever able to put a name to what manifestation is as a whole, honestly came from Big Brother. I remember there was a contestant, her name was Ashley from season 14, who talked about dream boards. And then I think, Christy in season 21, actually talked about manifestation a lot. And so I think that was the first time I had terms to really put it. But I look back on my life and I think we all experience manifestation in some way, shape, or form. We just have different names for it. So I grew up in a very religious household, and there was always the phrase, God helps those who help themselves. And that was basically saying sure, you can ask and you can pray for something, but if you don't actually do any of the work behind it, God can't do everything for you. So that was my first thing. I look at that, and that to me, that's kind of what manifestation is. About, you can put out these thoughts and ask the universe for things, but you also have to do things yourself. You can't just say, I want $10,000 in my bank account by tomorrow. It's not going to happen if you just sit back and do nothing. So, I think I look back and there's just been so many things that's okay, I was manifesting without realizing I was manifesting because I didn't have a term for it.
I know. I so can relate to that. I mean, you grew up Catholic, right?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And so, it's so interesting because it's you hear all these things and you learn all these things, and maybe you grew up this way, and then you kind of just hear it in a different sort of version, but you're oh, there's actually a tremendous amount of crossover. And that's what I always like too about the more I learn about neuroscience, the more I learn about psychology and all these things too. It's that crosses over as well. And it's we're just all talking about the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just using different words. We're doing, using different things. But I love how you kind of came across manifestation as a concept through Big Brother. Of course it would be, which I love that. I'm curious, did you have any other experiences, maybe growing up, high school, anything where the power of your thoughts kind of came into play in any sort of way?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where when we talk about manifestation, or, I had it in this religious context, and some people think of it very spiritually, but I also experienced it a lot in sports. Because just in so many different things. So I used to be a swimmer and a runner, and for swimming, before our meets, sometimes we would lay down and we would visualize our race, and we would like have a stopwatch. And so we would like picture in our mind, like, okay, I do my takeoff, or, my dive, and you tried to like stop it and visualize your race to like get your time. Or when I was in cross country, I remember we did this exercise at the beginning of the season. We all lined up and we were told by our coach, like, jump out, do like a standing long jump, basically as far as you possibly can. And so we all did that. And then we marked our spot with a rock. And then we went back to the line, and my coach said, okay, now on this jump farther than you put your rock. And so then we did it. And I think just about everybody jumped past it. And then my coach said, like, what gives on your first jump? I told you I'll jump as far as you possibly can. And then when you all had a goal that you were looking at, you were all able to go past that. So it's something that's not religious. It's not spiritual. It was sports, but it's like, it pops up in all these different ways. And, it's funny looking back now, like how much it was always there. I just never had a term for it.
Oh my gosh, I love that coach. That coach is onto something, because that is so interesting. The first thing that you're talking about, like the mental visualization sort of part of it, they've done studies that are so similar to that. I'm going to botch the like statistics of it, but they would have groups that would visualize doing free throws, a group that would actually practice free throws every day physically, and then a group that they're just like, play as much basketball as you want. Like, who cares about you guys? And then I think it was like there was a 25% improvement of those that practiced every day physically, and like a 23% improvement of those who only visualized. Didn't you ever physically pick up a basketball? It was like, that is so mind blowing to me. Like, 25 versus 23, we're like, that's hardly any difference there. And imagine if you combine both, which I'm sure what you and your track team was doing, like, okay, physically running as well as visualizing these things too. It's funny.
That's so funny that you say that, because it actually like triggers another memory. I took piano lessons like all through, like from 3rd grade to 12th grade. And whenever I would go on vacation, my piano teacher would tell me, like, bring your books along and practice like on your lap. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing. But it's like, no, like your brain is still working, and like visualizing the keys and everything. Like it is a good form of practice. I never even thought about that.
It's so interesting, because it's like the areas of the brain when we're visualizing these things, literally the same areas of the brain fire, and you're building up those synaptic connections, and so that it's like literally building the skill. And so you can imagine when you apply that to a goal or a dream, or even the kind of person you want to be, you're visualizing that again and again and again. You're giving your brain those instructions to be able to, be that person, in that way. That's so cool. I had never heard those stories. So that's a really neat, sort of thing. So wait, this was also something when I was like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast, Michael? Give me an excuse that we can just like talk and geek out. I learned that you have a dream board, or at least you used to. Do you still have one, or at least you used to have one?
Yeah. So
I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, I still have the actual board. It was like just like one of those little bulletin boards. It kind of fell apart when I moved down here, but I had it together, and I need to update it now, because I had Big Brother on there, and so like some things that I'm like, okay, I can move on to some new dreams for it, but again, I learned about
that's actually a hack, though. That's actually a hack. Leave at least, if you do update it, leave at least one thing that you did accomplish on there, because it signals to your brain that like, oh, these things are possible. Look, that one already happened. So these other ones, like, let's categorize that in the same thing. So just
I like
an
that.
FYI hack.
I like that. Yeah, I didn't know that, but it's just like this thing that I learned about from watching Big Brother, and I was like, you know what, like Sure, I'll do it. And I think, because, as some people, think it's weird or too out there, whatever, it's just like, it's no different than like making a bucket list or a checklist, or putting things like, these are things that I want to do, things that I want to accomplish. And I think sometimes, like, not to get cynical, but sometimes we're just told like our dreams are stupid sometimes, or like, that's never going to happen for you. And it's just like, why not? Like, and even if it doesn't, I think part of, the dream board, and like, kind of going back to what we talked about a little bit ago, it's also about doing the work to get there. So like, it's about making changes in my life. And, I think probably the closest thing that I have to that, I like to use like a habit tracker to like keep me on track. Cause I can be like the least motivated person ever, or like I get off track. But if I
say that to me, but I never believe it. I'm like, I only ever see the motivated side of you.
but like for me, like I'm sometimes like motivated by competition when I can physically like check something off at the end of the day. And then, or if I'm like, oh, I don't want to like do this thing, but like, no, it's my reward to myself and I get to check off the box. Like, you know, sometimes that helps. So I believe in visualizing things.
Did you say an app? Is that what you use?
I just have like this spreadsheet that I printed out and I put it on my fridge and I mark off the boxes every day. Cause then it's like, one of them that I have on there is like, I have the world's biggest sweet tooth. And so like, sometimes when I'm like, okay, I need to get on a bit of a health kick, I'll put on there like, you know, some sort of limiting, like, hey, like maybe only have one sugary snack today. So like, then when I'm like in the fridge, I'm like, oh, it's right here, right next to me. Like, I already checked that box off today that I already had my one, like, don't do it.
I could use that in the Big Brother storage room. I need one of those checklists on that candy,
right?
The Mr. Good bars.
Mr. Good bar, yep.
Oh my God, I have not had a single one of those in the year and a half since, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think the two of us were the only ones who ate them. So all the Mr. Good bars that were eaten in the house.
I would.
Annalisa. Okay.
I would. Yeah. Oh, maybe I don't know if she ate Mr. Goodbar. She definitely ate the other candies because I would see her sometimes in there. I'd be like caught. I'm like, oh, happened to meet you here in the candy drawer. Yeah. That's how we knew we were stressed. We're like stressful times. We're hitting the candy. You know, it's so funny when you talk about like, yeah. Are you a visual person? Do you feel like you, like in terms of your kinesthetic senses, are you more visual than auditory or like, I don't know, tactile or whatnot?
So I think I do well with seeing something. Now, I think we've talked about this before. Like when I close my eyes, like my brain doesn't work where I can like vividly picture things. Like I don't know why, it just doesn't. So like when you were doing like the guided meditations and you'd be like, you know, picture this, I'd be like, I know what it looks like, but like I can't like hold that visual in my mind for this, but I'll do my best.
I asked you to describe your living room to me. What would you, I mean, you don't have to describe it like we're, you know, the whole world knows it, but like what would you say if I said, describe your living room?
I mean, I think I'd be able to explain it. Like this is the furniture that I have in it, but like I don't like, it's like comes in flashes. I can't just like close my eyes and like, okay, I can see it here. I don't know. My brain just isn't wired that way.
And you know, it's so interesting, like being a hypnotherapist, like I've learned like people are all on the spectrum of visualization of any sort of kinesthetic sense of any kind. I think a lot of times we think that it needs to just be this crystal clear picture. And sometimes we see that with like, you know, chess masters that can visualize all their moves in a row or something. Okay. Or visual artists, you know, can really see these things. But, I'm the same way. It like comes in, like I can hold a vision, but like then it kind of like disintegrates and it's like all of that, you know, is fine. But I do work with some people that have, it's called aphantasia, which is the inability to be able to visualize. And believe it or not, you can still do now a group hypnosis setting, not going to work so much, but one-on-one hypnosis, you can actually still do hypnosis even if you can't visualize. I would just go about it in a different way. Usually I would say like, remember a time you held an apple or something like that, or, you know, whatever I'm having them visualize. And then I would say like, perceive yourself there. So it's almost like, it's kind of like it's almost like taking a detour in the brain. I'm able to like get them to a memory and then place them in that memory as opposed to them having to create it from scratch, there anyways. But anyways, that's getting like super technical, but you know, interesting to think. I think I told you about this, but I kept a cardboard cutout of my BB key on my desk for a full year before, I guess essentially when BB23 ended, I was like, I'm going to be on the next season. And I literally, I took the time to do this. I printed out a key. I photoshopped my name on it. So it said Brittany nice and big on it. I cut it out, found some cardboard, put it on my desk. So I'd look at it every single day. And that was such a satisfying feeling to replace it with my real key, you know, after the fact. And I kept that on my desk for a good amount. Then it was just like getting in the way. So I put it back with all my other Big Brother stuff. But, Another thing that you could also do too, for anyone who's listening and interested in vision boards, dream boards, those kind of things, you can make them the background of your phone, background of your computer. I also do that too. Because you're like, where are places like your fridge? Where are places you're going to see it a lot? It will just subconsciously kind of be there. And it's just kind of like a little ping to your mind. Like, yep, here's where we're focused. Here's where we're going. Like, this is what we're doing. So, this was a question somebody had, I put out feelers if anybody had questions. Did you use any aspects of, I know you mentioned Big Brother was on your vision board, any aspects of manifestation, positive thinking, anything like that to help you get through casting and to make it on Big Brother?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, I'm very critical of myself. So through the entire casting process, I probably wasn't as confident as I should have been, because I'm always just like, and we did this all the time. Like, what's worst case scenario? What could happen? When we were in the house. And so I thought about that so much through casting. It was like, I feel like I did okay in this interview, but there's probably someone better and this is probably the end, but at least I know for next year, so I was kind of negative, but, I still held on to hope. And, as I kept going, I think but I also was like almost afraid to let myself get too attached, I guess I'll say, to that I'm going to be on, because I was like, I'm just going to be crushed if it doesn't happen. So I think it was almost a way of protecting myself, or if it didn't happen, to be like, oh, well, I wanted it, but I knew it wasn't going to happen and I prepared myself for that. So, which I'm like, that's so dumb. I've spent way too much time stressing, and I could have just been like, you can do this and be confident and gotten more sleep.
It's so easy to look back on that, right? And realize those things. But I kind of see it both ways. I mean, I can see it okay, sure, as if that's kind of a defense mechanism, but also a certain element of detachment could also be helpful, an energetic sort of sense. I'm even thinking myself, that was the way I found a certain level of detachment with it all was I had just gone full time in my business a couple months prior to Big Brother. I remember in my audition video, I told them, I was like, I'm going full time in 83 days. I told them this, and my very first audition video. And, I just kept on repeating myself, I know this is going to be amazing summer no matter what. I get to be I get to live my dream job. I mean, I'd been doing it on the side for many months before then, but I was doing it full time now. I'm either going to be doing that all summer as I watch Big Brother, or I'm going to be on there, and it was kind of a way to, maybe that detachment in a way might have, I don't know. If you become so attached to this one singular outcome, that's not how manifestation works either. We don't get to determine the how. I know both of us had made it to various levels of previous season auditions. Can you imagine if we would have been in one of those other seasons? We don't get to determine the how of Big Brother. It happened the season, we were on. It does make me sad though to hear that you were nervous and stuff like that. To think about how nice it would have been to be there for each other during that, to know we were both going through that experience, and yet to not know each other yet. That would have been nice.
Yeah.
Talk to me about other manifestation tools you use. Now, I know something. I know we've talked about this.
I know exactly
something
what it
that you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Something that spoke to my heart week 1 of Big Brother is that you shared your affirmation with me in the BB house, which was you can and you will. And then of course we expanded it for our Festy Bestie comps. We can and we will. And I remember when you shared that with me week 1, I was just like, oh my God, this is my person in the game. He doesn't even know I do affirmations for a living. This is my person. Talk to me about what role affirmations play for you. Why are they important for you? Talk to me about that.
Specifically with that phrase, and it's funny, I stole it from the host of Big Brother Canada. She said it during one of their double evictions when someone didn't want to make a decision. She's like, no, you can and you will. And I remember hearing that, and I was like, I know you were referring to the game when you said this, but it's that's a great motto. And that was actually I wrote that on a card, and that was at the center of my dream board, was you can and you will, because it's just a reminder, because like I said, I can be very critical of myself, and it's just nice to have a reminder that you're capable of doing this, and you will do this. It's not just that you're capable, but it will happen for you. And I think for me, as someone who always thinks worst case scenario and can be kind of hard on myself, it's nice to see that. And, you know, I think even just like repeating that over and over, it kind of helps. And at some point it just becomes second nature, like, yeah, I can and I will. And it's not just, oh, I'm telling myself that I can, but like start to believe it.
You repeat it enough that you really do truly start to believe it. I mean, that's the whole crux of hypnotherapy, is we get in this very relaxed state where there's not all that crunchy static in your mind of the conscious mind, right? We let that go. We get in a relaxed state. We repeat positive statements to ourselves in that relaxed state. Hypnotists call them suggestions. We repeat them again and again and again. And then at first you're like, I don't know about this, but you keep on repeating it. And you're like, well, maybe, your brain wants to like look for evidence of how that can be true. Why are you giving me this instruction that's so false? It finds evidence that it can be true. And I mean, that's exactly what I did. I did my little 10-minute hypnosis every night, all of casting process, saying, I am on Big Brother 24. And at first it was just like, oh, it felt like I just cringe just saying it. Like, who am I to think I'd be on there? But then all of a sudden I was like, well, the season before had some interesting people. I mean, you don't meet a hypnotist every day. Maybe that's interesting. I don't know, and you start to find evidence that fulfills that thought. You can and you will. I didn't even know it was on your freaking dream board. Yep. Like that really, oh man, Michael, you remember some of those comps. I just held on to that sentence for dear life, because that sentence had to be true. It had to be true, or else our big dream that we worked so hard for was just going to go away. And that kept both of us afloat. I appreciate you shared that with me so early on, because Lord knows I needed it.
Yeah. And there were definitely times within competitions when I would like tell myself, like I remember like the slip and slide when we were out there for an hour and a half or whatever. And it was just like something to like keep my mind focused on and like stay positive, rather than be like, oh my gosh, I'm dying right now. I'm so tired. Like if I let my mind think that, like, then like I'm going to shut down. But if I like say positive things to myself and just kind of keep reminding myself and keep myself focused. So I also found it really helpful for that. Like when I was in the stressful competitions and just kind of staying calm and focused is, something better to focus on than how tired I am.
That's so true. And how you were talking about, manifestation isn't all about just thinking the thoughts and then doing nothing. It's so amazing to see how your thoughts impact you. If you would have thought, I'm so tired, you're going to feel more tired. And then how's that going to impact your actions? You're not going to be as fast, But if you're thinking these thoughts, I can and I will, I can and I will, I can and I will, like that's going to create a greater sense of motivation, which in turn fuels your actions. I know we've talked about this in past episodes of how this trickle down effect from our thoughts to our emotions to our actions. And it's just, it's so true. Even if we're just setting aside manifestation, like completely, like it's not some woo woo, like magic bolt of lightning that happens to you. It's like, it literally is like how it cascades through your mind, all starting with that thought. So we talked a little bit about mental rehearsal. I want to talk about that again. You shared a really interesting story with me though about, okay, we focus so much on getting on to Big Brother, right? That's like such a focus. And then we're in the house and there's a million things to focus on. Talk to me about what you focused on in Big Brother and how you focused on like how far you get in the game and that. Like, tell me more about your thought process there.
Yeah. And this is something that I look back and was like, that was a mistake. But I think, at a certain point, I had won a lot of competitions and I knew I had a target on my back. There were attempts to backdoor me. And, so in my mind, if you make it to the final 6, you are automatically guaranteed to play in the veto competitions. Like if I can just make it to 6, at least I'll get to play and fight for my life. And then if I lose and I go home, at least I had a chance. And I was just like, I have to just make it 6. I have to make it to 6. Well, I made it to 6. And then I was like, it was a double eviction. It was all happening so fast. And that was the one time that one veto competition where I went in and I was just so frazzled. I was not calm or focused. And I was just like, I was so focused on getting to this point. I didn't think about when I actually get here, and I knew what to do. I should have just kept doing everything I had done before them, but I just was so worried about looking too far ahead that I wasn't focused on the now, that I was so short-sighted. And then that was I just wasn't in a good headspace. And it was, of course, the competition required very like calm, calculated motions. And I was not in that headspace going in there. And the very short time we had was like, oh, it just was a recipe for disaster.
Oh, Michael. And that's just so interesting because it's like, you focus on get to six.
Mm-hmm.
If your brain's like, all right, Michael, I hear you. We're getting to six. Okay. Hear you. Great instructions. Like, let's keep going.
My brain's like, we did it. We're done. It's like, no, we're not.
The jury now.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So like, cause I was in the exact same boat. I could not. And what was freaking me out is I knew the implications of this too. I could not visualize myself in those final two chairs. And I am a damn good visualizer. It is what I do for a living. I could not do it. The only time I ever could visualize myself in those final two chairs was sitting next to you and knowing that I wouldn't win, which is like, fun. Would have loved that over fourth, but like not why we come, and play the game. You want to win, right? And I think I know I got a lot of crap online when I would like share that with you that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the final two with you because really like that was only what I could visualize. Like I literally couldn't get myself to visualize and when I say visualize, I mean believe anything else. Like, sure, would it have been smarter for me to somehow finagle something where Turner and I were final two? That would probably have been my best case scenario given the situation. But that would I could never get myself to believe that would actually ever happen. And we can only create within the limits of our belief, right? And so it's like, it's interesting to think about where do we focus? Because I know myself, I was so focused on just getting on to Big Brother that I never really did that same level kind of prep and mindset and belief work that was required to believe that not only will I get on, but I will win this thing. If you could do it again in terms of the belief work that you would do, what would you focus on instead, do you think?
Yeah, I think, and like going into the house, I did kind of have like a little mental checklist and, milestones that I wanted to reach. And I don't know, I think I would have just still done that because I do think that like, if I looked just at the end when I'm at the beginning, like I'm ignoring what I need to do to get there. But I think I would have kept that in mind better about, I need to get to 6 because at that point, my fate is in my hands to get myself to the final 2 or something like that. I think, and that's just what it's so hard in a game like Big Brother is that there's so many variables and so many factors that there's so much that you're thinking of. And I guess that was just like the easiest, like next milestone that I was so focused on and so concerned about not reaching because of factors outside my control.
There's context to why you wanted that. You would incorporate that into the instruction to the brain. Why are we wanting to get to this place? So that I can just win my way to the end,
Yeah. And I think part of it too is like in my head, I was like, because if I get to 6 and I lose, I can live with that. I won't have the what if. Well, what if I had played in this? What if I had done that? It would be like, I had a chance and I messed up. And it's like, of course I went in with like, oh, well, if I lose, like, I'll be okay. Like,
it's fine.
Yeah. It's like, no.
But brain, we want to keep winning. Yeah. Destination Manifestation will be right back. So let me ask you this. When do you plan on living your dream life? Seriously. Because here's the thing, the past is done. The future is never promised. So when? Honestly, now is the only time you have to live a life of your dreams. Because the now is all you are ever guaranteed. It's all you ever really truly have. Now, I'm sure you guys see this all the time, right? These days, we have such amazing people doing such amazing things. We have international superstars like Taylor Swift and Beyonce taking the music world by storm. We have entrepreneurs that are literally funding their way to space. We have Nobel-winning scientists developing life-saving vaccines and cures to diseases. I mean, it's literally mind-blowing. And hey, don't get me wrong. I love these big, huge, life-changing manifestations. I see them every day. But just yesterday, I was traveling on home and I was thinking to myself, what if you just want to enjoy your life a little bit more fully? And manifest a life that brings you joy, contentment, maybe a little bit extra fun, freedom, time. Or maybe it's manifesting a new job or a move to a new city or even meeting your soulmate, your dream partner. Maybe it's manifesting a business that affords you a life to focus on your passions and what you love most. Hey, I manifested that. I understand. Well, it turns out that's exactly what one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching is designed to help you do. For manifesting more abundance, whether that be money, time, freedom, love, to creating a life that you're actually excited to live. One-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching can help you create the mindset that will fuel a better, more joyful life for you. And through my one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching programs, I'll take your hand and I'll guide you through the tools that you need to align your thoughts, your beliefs, and your actions to create a life of your wildest dreams. Trust me, right now the world just feels downright chaotic. There's so many different things that are competing for our attention. You got the news, you got social media, obligations, chores, responsibilities. There's so many demands placed on us that it just feels like there's nothing left for you. But with my programs that use the power of hypnotherapy specifically for manifestation, my one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching programs are like having that personal trainer, but for your mind. That's kind of what I am, because together we build those mental muscles that are required to believe in your success, to map out a plan, and to support you every step of the way so that you can begin to live life on your own terms. Trust me, now is the time to live your life and start manifesting your success today. Go to BrittanyHoops.com to learn more. Well, winning is what you did though, Michael. I mean, you won so many freaking competitions. I want to talk about what is that winning mindset. So first of all, did you think going into Big Brother that you'd win so many competitions? Like, was that on your radar?
No.
Really?
Short answer, no. I think, from watching the show, I knew what to expect from competitions. And in my head, I was like, I think I can do well at a lot of these competitions. And for me, especially, I was thinking like the late game ones that I didn't even make it to, when you're recalling days and events, I was like, that kind of stuff, like just from going through law school and everything and like taking the bar and memorizing things, like I'm ready for that stuff. And it was just some of these weird competitions that you would never like, how on earth do you prepare for something like this that I just ended up being good at? And I don't know. And I think there again, it was like, kind of doubting myself. And I was like, well, you know what? They're going to cast like these super athletes. And I run, but like, I don't lift. I don't do a lot of these things.
You lunge across. I think you could get across that backyard in like 3 steps, if I recall.
Yeah. So I don't know. I surprised myself, but I think, whenever I saw a competition, I would always like, go into my like mental mode of like, okay, what do I need to do? Trying to just strategize things out even before it started to like go in with a plan. Cause I felt if I had a plan, I'd have some semblance of control, and I don't know. It worked out for the most part, but it was a surprise.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. You know what's so funny? I actually did a hypnotherapy session. Of course, I wasn't able to share any reason why I was doing it, but I did a hypnotherapy session with my hypnotherapist for, dizzy spinning. Cause I knew, oh my gosh, if I got one of those comps, I was going to be done for. And could you imagine, and I know it comes up all the time. So I did a session, which it's funny because as we talked, I was like, well, I think I told my hypnotherapist I was going to, a family reunion where we were going to play a lot of yard games and I might be spun. And so I needed some help. He's like, man, you really care about a family reunion, don't you? You did this whole session about a family reunion. Anyways, but he helped like with my confidence, and we created something and I do this for my clients all the time, but we created something called an anchor so that I could, put if you're watching the video version, you see, my, what do you call that? Is it pointer finger and thumb finger, put them together and, or it was like 2 of the fingers or whatever. And it would like, it would bring up memories and feelings of like focus and courage. And I think it was like, the lioness. That was like the anchor, like the feeling of what it means to be like a lioness. And it really does work. I do this with my clients all the time. You can anchor feelings of peace. You can anchor any sort of resource state that you want instant access to. This is an old NLP technique that you can do that, and it fills you kind of immediately with that sensation. And I use that before every single comp. The comp I remember most specifically using it was in the wee hours of the morning with that Cuckoo Fest comp. After you had left, I was fired up. I knew I was going to be the next one out. And I just remember, I mean, my fingers were like turning white. I was holding them so much, just being like, I'm doing that. Like, I'm doing this, just getting in this like lioness mindset. And it was easy then too, because I was just like, F all y'all, I'm blowing this place up. Like, everyone's against me. I'm doing this. And it's just funny how, again, what do you kind of feed your mind? Like, what fuels you? Because that infiltrates your action. And I feel like, the mindset that you had really sort of infiltrated these things. So talk to me. What do you think makes, Big Brother or otherwise, but what do you think makes a winning mindset? Like, what's the ingredients of that?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's being, doing as much preparation as you can while allowing yourself to, be kind to yourself if you do make a mistake, and also acknowledging that some things outside of your control might happen. Cause I think for me, again, like I'm very hard on myself. So if something doesn't go exactly as planned, that can like really throw me off sometimes. And it's like, I need to understand it's like, I'm human. I make mistakes, and you pick up and you keep going. But I don't know. I always expect a lot of myself. So when I don't live up to that, sometimes it's hard for me to get my mind back in like, hey, it's okay. Like, it is not the end of the world. And I think just having that preparation, but being kind to yourself and just allowing things to happen. And sometimes things happen in ways that we don't expect, and the outcomes will be what we're hoping for, but it's a completely different path to get there. And that's okay too. Sometimes you just have to go with it.
Yeah. So it's like this preparation, compassion, and like present moment flexibility, present moment openness, like kind of, all right, future BB people, you heard it here first. This is the winning mindset. Okay, Michael, I want to say something, and I mean this the most lovingly way possible, okay?
Okay.
You are literally one of the most competitive people I have ever met in my entire freaking life.
I believe it. That was one of my adjectives when they're like, describe yourself in 3 words. I think that was the first word that I used, was like competitive.
And you did a very good job, I think, of managing it, like in the house, like you remind me of my husband in that way. Like you don't gloat when you win, but man, are you upset if you lose, but you kept it all kind of very good, in the house. Yeah. It wasn't until, of course, we being friends outside the house and I played Settlers of Catan for you for the first time that I was like, who is this man? And I was like, oh, you just make so much sense now the first time we hung out together. Why I'm mentioning this, Michael, is do you think being competitive, like the quality of being competitive, helps or hinders one's ability to win?
I'm going to give you the lawyer answer. It depends. I think it depends like how far you fall on that and how you can keep it in check. Like if you are like winning is all that matters, it's probably not going to go well for you. But if you're like, I really like to win and I want to win, but I'm also going to enjoy it while I'm in it, I think that makes it a lot easier because it takes some of that pressure off of you, where if you're like, I have to be perfect and do this, this, and this, or I'm not going to win, it's a lot of pressure. So yeah, I think that, and I don't know, it really depends, but that's what I notice. Like sometimes when I'm too aggressive or whatever, and then I look back like, oh, like you probably should have dialed it down a little bit. Like, I'm like, and it wasn't even smart. It wasn't even helping me at that point. At some point, I think it just kind of like limits what you're seeing because all you're focusing on is just winning. And, it's more than just that.
So it sounds like at some point being competitive, if you don't keep it in check, can cross this line where it's like not allowing it to be fun, or the losses too. I could understand that. I almost feel like I may have crossed that line a little bit during Big Brother. I know we've talked about this before, but I was always kind of envious of somebody like Monty who didn't know the show really beforehand and was just like there having a good time. I just see him sitting in his spot on the kitchen table, just eating his healthy breakfast or whatever it was. And I'm just like, you're just enjoying yourself. Like, don't you know this is the biggest deal in the entire world, you know? And I feel like I made it be life or death for me because it was like, well, multiple things. It was a lifelong dream that I didn't want to have in too soon. And also I had falsely, I will admit, had equated me winning or not winning equals being able to start my family because that was how I was going to use the money. And granted, it would have very much helped that, but am I going to be childless now for the rest of my life because I didn't win Big Brother? No, I'm figuring out a different way, right? But in that house, like, it was like my way to like make, you know, to help my family, and my husband was going to be so proud. And like, I just assigned these like bigger than life reasons. And so it literally became like life or death for me. And then it was fun. Don't get me wrong. Big Brother was a ton of fun, but like that mentality does not add to the fun. You know, that mentality detracts from the fun. And when you're not having fun with any game, you're putting too much pressure on it. You're not going to perform as well as you could, I would imagine, you know, at least that was for my case.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I felt very similarly where it was like, this is my dream. And even going in, I was like, if I don't win, I'm going to be devastated and I won't be happy with anything. And I've made it far and I got to do a lot of things that I really wanted to do. And I left and of course I was sad. I really wanted to, you know, make it all the way to experience all that it had to offer. But I was like, I'm actually okay. Like, one of the, first conversations that I had when I got back home, I was talking to my sister and she was like, well, don't you just hate Taylor because she won and you didn't? And I was like, no, I love Taylor. And I was actually like very excited to cast my vote for her, you know, in the end. And it was just like, oh, like maybe I'm not quite as competitive as I thought I was, or like I still am, but like my mindset when it comes to losing, maybe I've gotten better at it and I can. Because I always said, like, the people who come off of losing a reality show and they're like, what I learned about myself was worth more than, you know, the $750,000. I'm like, oh, that's what losers say. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, yes, I was a loser because I didn't win, but I can recognize that there are things that I take away from the experience that I'm like, I'm still leaving this even though I didn't win, that I'm so happy. And like, I can sleep at night not worrying about like, oh my gosh, messed up my lifelong dream.
No, I am so the same way too. I mean, of course I wanted to win, but like it was up there with this, you know, making lasting friendships, getting to like just feel like I was at the Super Bowl, which is my Super Bowl, sitting in front row and watching comps live, getting to play comps, getting to win comps. I mean, gosh, like I don't know if I had expectations from what would happen. I definitely didn't expect to win. I just wanted to like, I don't know. I honestly don't think I had expectations. I think I probably expected that I would be like middle of the game. I made it further than I expected to go. Then again, I just didn't, again, another thing I would change is like, I would allow myself to give the instructions to beyond just get in the house. You know, I would have tried to prepare. And I think if you were to, you know, not to say either of us would ever play again or had the opportunity to, but if you were given that chance to do that, it's not taking away that initial, like no one can take away BB24 from us. So it would be so much easier to allow your mindset to go. Of course, then you'd be playing against all these other people who played against too. And that's a whole other, you know, set of challenges, but no one could take away the initial experience, which was mostly the thing that I was most worried of losing, you know, you know, that sort of thing. So let me ask you this, which was harder mentally, Big Brother or law school?
Ooh. I would have to say Big Brother. Like, obviously law school was very stressful, but there were like, I had outlets, you know, I could unplug, I could watch TV. And law school too is like, I'm the biggest nerd that I know. Like I loved school. So I enjoyed going to class and learning things and Big Brother. And obviously I had fun and I loved doing it, but it was just, I think I put more pressure on myself in that situation because I was like, I know I'm going to make it through school. Like I've always been good at school. Like, so I think that played into it as well. But
and the lack of outlets. I mean, that's what's Big Brother, the social experiment is designed is let's literally take away any sort of stress outlet you might have other than maybe like an exercise bike or something, which was not my stress outlet. But like, you know, it makes it considerably harder. That's for sure. So anyone in this life who plays a game, plays to win, also has losses, right? That's all part of being in the arena and playing. So tell me about a time when you had to like choose to be resilient, you know, when you were thinking like, oh my gosh, do I give up? Do I try again? Like, has that ever come up for you?
Yeah. I definitely think about when I was applying to law school. So, when you apply for law school, and it might be changing now, there's always talks about it, but you have to take, what's called the LSAT. It's like the law school admissions test, which is kind of like, you know, the ACT or SAT in a way, but it just tests like your reasoning, your, analytical skills, your writing, things like that to see if you know, if they think you're prepared to go to law school. And I've always, you know, again, biggest nerd that I know, I kind of like taking standardized tests. Like there's something satisfying to me about like, you know, filling in the bubbles and doing all this, like,
getting it nice.
So like, I was like, oh, like, I'm not too worried about this, but I was like, you know, I'm going to do my homework. So like, I got all this prep material, these books, practice tests, and before I started my studying, cause I was working at the time. And so, I, you know, came home from work and was like, I'm just going to take a practice LSAT just to get a baseline, see where I need to work and what I need to focus on. And so I, you know, took the test, got my score, started studying, working on things. And then like, all within like a very short period of time, like it was like my Murphy's Law month, like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Like, we got like bad news at work that if this certain project didn't go through, like probably within the next year, everyone was going to be let go because it was like make or break it for this company. I had some family drama that went really horribly. I got broken up with, and it was just like everything that could go wrong, like went wrong. And that just totally threw me off. And I was like, you know, I tried to keep studying, but like it was not quality. And I was just kind of like going through the motion. So come test day, I, you know, take the LSAT and I like, you know, don't feel super confident, and I get my score, and it was like almost the exact same score as my like baseline before I did any studying. I was just devastated because like I studied for months for this, and I felt like I got in my own head and got in my own way. And I was like, so then of course, you know, I'm spiraling because like everything else went wrong, and now here goes law school too. And so like I just had a moment where I was like, do I just quit now? Because I, you know, in my eyes, I failed. Like, you know, maybe I could have gotten in if I had applied with that score, but in my mind, it was not my goal score at all. And I was just like, no, like, I know that I can do better than this. And I don't know if this was like the healthiest thing to do, but I also thought like, you know, all this stuff that went wrong, like I'm letting these people win. I'm letting, you know, my family saying this stuff, you know, destroy my dreams. I'm letting getting, you know, my ex who dumped me, he's winning if like this disrupted my life plans. So I was like, no, like, and so then, and kind of funny, it ties back into, you know, I put that on my dream board. I put a picture of the school that I wanted to go to with, you know, the score that I was shooting for, and I tacked that up, and then I got back to studying and went much better the second time around. And I was like, okay, it worked. I reframed my mind and I made it happen. So I was very glad that I didn't quit and give up, because, you know, who knows where I would be if I would have just been like, oh, that's it.
Right. And think about what it would have done to your like self-concept too. Mm-hmm. If you let all those things win, then you don't ever know you're the kind of person who could do exactly what you did. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, I mean, I think I talked about this in a previous episode. It's like, don't you be the one to give up on you, because then you take that in as evidence for thinking that like think about who Michael would be if that Michael would have just been like, this is who I am. And then just let that and went on that trajectory, you know, as opposed to, okay, that was devastating, but I pick myself up. I go back. I try it again. I do great. You know, you're that kind of person now. Like, and then that begins to just sort of have a butterfly effect so beautifully in your life otherwise. And I'm the same exact way. I've been doing this here recently and thinking about it like, not so much anymore, but you know, when we first get out of Big Brother, right? Anybody in Big Brother is soon going to realize that there are like not always the nicest people online. Okay. There are a million nice people, but for every million nice people, there is a not so great. There's an internet troll, right? And I had this thought that I was like, oh my gosh, like my focus from a manifestational point of view, your focus is the most important thing you could ever have. Where you place your attention, you create more of where you place your attention, right? And so it's almost like your focus is like a magic wand and it's just like the most powerful thing ever. Whatever you boop, you know, you get more of. I was basically handing that to some toxic person, BB Twitter person. Like, I mean, literally, I was like, here's my magic wand. Like, and I was giving that all my focus. Like, no, I do not want to do that. Like that, I would never give, like, you never give that ex, you would never give all these people, right? The power of your focus. You wouldn't let them win, you know? And it's really just like learning to live for yourself and what you said was going to happen. And I love how you said that, like, that was on your vision board. You tacked up that school you wanted to go to, the score you wanted. And so what's so beautiful about that is like, sometimes we think we know the how, we think we know the route. You best believe the time I got to semifinals for Big Brother and didn't get it, I was so devastated because I thought that was my how on the Big Brother. And I was like, oh my gosh, so now I'm not going to be on Big Brother. That wasn't the truth. I'm going to be on Big Brother. It just wasn't the season. We don't get to determine the how, you know, we keep in mind the thing that you want. Universe, energy, divine timing, whatever you want to call it, gets to determine the how. Same with you and the LSAT. Like, okay, the first test was not your how. Second test was, you know? So what do you do when the thing that you're believing in doesn't happen? And I'll say doesn't happen the way you envisioned, right? Doesn't happen in the how that you thought. What's kind of your frame of mind when those sort of things happen?
Yeah, I think for me, I can be very goal oriented, but I think it's also about the journey along the way where it's like, okay, I did all of this stuff to make this happen and it didn't work out, but you know, I actually gained all of these other skills and different things. And how, you know, now do I take that and apply and try to make that specific goal happen again? Or can I transfer it somewhere else and make something else happen out of it? Cause I think a lot of times if we work for something that we're like bettering ourselves for, I'm never gonna be, oh gosh, like, I wish I wouldn't have bettered myself if I knew I wasn't going to get it. Like, no, like I still did like all this stuff, you know, like even going back to sports, like if I didn't hit, you know, if I didn't get a new PR, a new personal record in a race, I'm not like, gosh, I wish I wouldn't have worked out at all. But like, no, like I'm still getting in better shape. And like, just because on this one day it didn't work out, like I now have the building blocks to either apply it here and do better in the same exact thing, or I can take it somewhere else. And now I've, you know, at the very least, maybe I've worked on, you know, discipline or focus, even if the exact things I'm not going to take with me, but I've learned. And that's kind of a hard lesson, I think, to learn, because I think, I don't know, we're very hard on ourselves, I feel like, a lot of times. And, you know, it's very easy to be like, I failed. And it's like, and it's sometimes, you know, cliche to, you know, say like, it's not necessarily a failure. It's like a learning opportunity, but I think that is very important to take. And I look at a lot of things where in the moment it felt like this is the end of the world that this happened. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, no, it wasn't. Like, I'm glad that didn't happen because then this other thing happened. And if I had gone this route, this would have never happened. And, so I think just looking at the overall picture and being okay and just kind of trusting that, you know, something more will come and maybe this just wasn't meant to be.
And that's so the hardest part because that perspective usually comes with time. Like the lessons, it's very hard to like, oh, this is the lesson out of this, like 2 seconds after you finish it. Or when you're in the midst of the quote unquote failure, you know, you're just so focused on like, I didn't get that thing that I wanted. And it's so hard to remember like, okay, X amount of time from now, I'm going to be able to kind of like peer back on the situation and realize, oh, that's what lined up this and this and this and this, you know? I mean, I even think so of like both of us getting on this season of Big Brother, you know? I remember that was one of the things that you told me. You're like, I think they cast us as friends. And I was like, oh my God, I think you're right. You are like a carbon copy of the kind of person I would hang out with in the real world. Like, and it's just so funny. It's like, oh, well, of course we didn't get cast on other seasons. Like they didn't cast our friends in those seasons. They cast our friends here, you know? And it's just, I don't know. I just kind of think that's beautiful. Did we know that at the time? Did we know that that would be the thing? No, you don't know. You don't know until afterwards. Here's another question, and we kind of touched upon this, but I'm curious. Somebody else had asked this. So how did you stay focused through law school? So you took the LSAT, you got in, now you're in law school. How did you stay focused? Any tips there?
I think with law school, I don't know. It's this weird environment where it is a competitive environment because all of your grades are, at least the school that I went to, is like based on a curve. So you're competing against each other basically, but like the school that I went to, like it was very Minnesotan where everyone was still very nice. We all like, we would, help each other. We would share notes and it just like, it was a friendly competitive environment, which was just nice. And then I think just having that goal of, like law school is only step one because after you go to law school, if you want to practice law, you have to pass the bar exam. So it's like, all of this is just preparing me to take the bar. So I need to soak in as much as I can now because when it comes time, the 3 months between graduation and the bar, like I don't want to be starting from zero at that point. Like I want to have a good base and then kind of, focus on those test taking tips and everything. So that was, definitely a focus. And for me too, law school was more than just like, oh, I'm doing this to get a job for me because, originally, like when I was in high school, like I wanted to go to law school. And, when I got out of high school, or kind of towards the end, the legal job market wasn't, super promising at the time. And my parents were very much like, don't do that. Like do something more practical, which everyone's like, your parents were like, don't be a lawyer.
We're practical to be a lawyer. What?
Yeah. So they were like very much pushing me because I did well in math and science or like, those kind of jobs are like always going to be steady and growing fields. So they really pushed me into that. And I don't know, I was 18. I didn't know what I was doing. So I listened. And so for me, I went through college and started working in a career that I wasn't passionate about. And so going back to school was kind of like my, first big rebellious thing that I did. Like, I know my parents aren't happy about this decision, but this is something I'm doing for me. And this is a goal that I want to do for myself. And I think that perspective, like I wasn't doing it for anybody, but for me. And that also really helped keep me focused because it was something that I was passionate about and I cared about.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that's why I work with my clients all the time. Like, let's define your why. Like, you gotta have the strongest why ever. And you might I literally will ask that why question. It's old life coach hack. Ask it like 6 times in a row. So why do you want to go to law school? Because blah, blah, blah. Well, why do you want that? Because blah, blah, blah. Why do you want that? Like, let's get down to the base level of why this matters so much to you, because that's going to motivate those long study sessions. That's going to motivate all these, I don't want to say hardships, but like not easy tasks, probably not tasks that like you always are in the mood for, but they're going to support that like why. And it sounds like you had a really strong why to like, I'm doing this for me. I'm fulfilling a dream, for me that can just kind of keep you focused and keep you going. I love that. Mm-hmm. So speaking of dreams, this is my final question, Michael. Dream with me. What does future Michael look like? I'm actually not calling it future Michael. I'm calling it manifested me. Like the version of you who has what you want to have, is who you want to be. Like what are you dreaming up for the future?
I don't know. I hope I have time. I have a quick story that I want to say about this question, because when I went to college, we had to take this like freshman class, and there was a TA who had talked to us and stuff. And she gave us like this sheet, and it was, fill out, your plans and what you want to be. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life at that point. And I just wrote like, my goal is to be happy. And she, we talked about, she's like, you're the only person who wrote that. Everyone else said, I want to do this or do that or do this. And it was like, to me, like when I look at what I want my life to look like in the future, maybe I don't know exactly what job that's going to be or what this or that, but it's like, I want to be happy, because I think I spent so much of my life trying to make, my parents happy, or doing what I thought I should do and didn't follow what I wanted for me to be happy. So when I always think about my future, that's always like the first thing that I think of, is like, whatever I'm doing, I want to be happy. I want it to be, something that brings me joy and that I have passion for. And, I want, for my life with me and Hayden post marriage to be good with our cats. And as long as I'm happy, that is, the dream. That's a win for me. It's not necessarily about this, I need to be in this job position doing this thing, but I want to be happy.
Oh, I love that so much. And isn't that just so crazy how that's so easy to lose sight of? Especially, let's just say the audience I'm attracting this podcast, very goal driven, dream driven people. We have to remember, like, okay, what are we really aiming for here? And like, I always think of emotions as like flavors. Like, what flavor do we want to bring to life? We want, like, what does happiness look like? What does joy look like? How do you know it when you're experiencing it? Happiness. Like, how do you define that? Because I think a lot of people get tripped up with that. They're like, I want to be happy. And then they're like looking for happiness everywhere, and they wouldn't know it if it hit them, over the top of the head. So like, what is that? I'm just curious. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. For me, in different areas of my life, it looks like different things, but like, I sometimes just like have this like sometimes it's just like an inner peace where I'll be like, like if I'm surrounded, like doing something that I love to do with like my closest friends, and like I just have like a little moment where I look around and like, this is so nice. And I think back to like, young Michael, like if he could see what I was doing right now, like he like wouldn't believe that was possible because of everything that was going on when I was growing up, and like to be where I'm at and be like, I never thought that this was possible. Or, like little things where I just like, I see my cat sleeping in a cute position, and I just feel like this little like warm, fuzzy feelings inside. Or like when I, just doing something, even just like every day, like just like driving in the car with Hayden and we're having like, a fun conversation. I just look over and like, I just like, it makes me smile because it was like, I never thought that this was possible. And, just like there's little moments where it's just like this peace and warm feeling inside. And I don't know. It probably is different for everyone, but for me, that's when I just have those moments where I'm just like, oh, like I'm just happy right now. It feels good, and nothing else matters at this moment.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me cry. That's so sweet. Yeah, because it's like, what do you call them? We always talk or hear about like triggers, right? Like, oh, this thing was triggering to me, or this, like those are what they call, those are glimmers. Like those little moments that's like almost the opposite of a trigger. It's like those little moments where it's like you realize it. It triggers something, but it triggers happiness. It triggers inner peace, contentment. Just realizing. And I love how you're like, oh, little Michael, like little me would not believe this. And like, how amazing is that? And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit. I think you're talking about like how it's so easy to kind of beat yourself up about things and stuff. And it's like, oh my God, if like little Michael or little Brittany like could see what we did now, how proud they would be, I always love to think about that. So thank you for everything. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for letting us into your mind for a little bit. It was so much fun, and I think there's a lot to kind of learn for somebody who's just looking to want to up their game and just, I don't know, live a happier life. Live a happier life and maybe win some things along the way. That's what I hope. So thank you so much. So
thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
Yeah, take a step back. For the ones
Wasn't
who
that
can't do
so
that.
much
I was
fun?
born-
Oh, Michael, my bestie. So I want to catch you guys up. There's actually some really fun things that happened after this episode too that I think will kind of give you some good background. So you know how we talked, Michael and I talked about this episode about mental blindness, right? Or the lack of being able to visualize, which is a condition called aphantasia. So although this concept dates back, I think, to Aristotle, that the term aphantasia was only coined by psychologists back in 2015. So it's a relatively new area where we actually have neuroscientific understanding. And, you know, it's funny because I have some clients who fall in that 2 to 5% of the population who can't visually see images in their heads. Like if I tell you to think of an apple, can you see that apple in your head? Like I can see it like, if you watch the video, you see that I'm closing my eyes and trying to do this. If I think of an apple, I can see it. Like I can see it. Does it look like crisp, clear, like I'm looking at a picture? No, it's like very faded and it kind of comes in or out, but I can see it and I can turn it around and I can pick it up and I can put it on the moon. I mean, I can make it do whatever it needs to, right? Like in my mind. And people who have aphantasia cannot do that. And that's Michael falls into that group. And so I was looking into this more to help him, to help my clients. And I found this great article that Time Magazine did about this, and I'll link to it in the show notes. And it describes some of the qualities of people that people who have aphantasia tend to have. They tend to be highly analytical people. They tend to have a higher IQ than average. And this is the kicker. It's just so funny to me. They tend not to be as scared by scary stories since they can't visualize them and almost put themselves into that context in their mind. And so when I read that, I was like, I text Michael. I was like, Michael, this is you. Look, this is you. And we were having a big laugh about it because, you know, he loves scary movies and horror movies and, you know, he can tolerate them much better than most folks, right? And he's also a certified genius. I can't remember what he did. I remember he told that story. He Mensa or something. Is that it? I don't know. Michael, I should know more about your life. Sorry. But I mean, like, really, like, how funny is that? I also thought there was a really interesting thing that Michael brought up here about how losing Big Brother wasn't nearly as bad as he had thought it would be, right? Here it was like a worst case scenario, right, of getting to be on Big Brother and not winning. And he shared in this episode about how it wasn't actually that bad. And so I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts the other day, which is The Happiness Lab by Dr. Laurie Santos. She's a professor of psychology at Yale. And in this podcast, I'll link to it in the show notes as well. It described this really beautiful phenomenon that basically Michael was describing himself. It's that we as humans tend to overestimate how good something will feel and how long those good feelings will last, like winning Big Brother or getting on to Big Brother or, you know, any sort of goal you might accomplish. And we also overestimate how bad a worst case scenario would be. So like Michael, we tend to, in our minds, before something happens, just think we would be devastated if we didn't win, but it ends up not being as bad as we had thought in your mind. So in actuality, the good isn't so good and the bad isn't so bad. It's just a good reminder for all of us goal setting folks, you know, like it's gonna be okay. Whether something good happens, whether something bad happens, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. The wins, they're amazing. The manifestations are phenomenal, but those good feelings don't last forever. Like, and I know that sounds like kind of like a downer, but it's the truth. And I think we should set ourselves up for that so that we don't make our manifestations like the end all be all of life, because they're not going to inherently make you happy. If you aren't enjoying yourself on the journey towards destination manifestation, the journey is what's the happy part. It is not the destination. The destination is not as good as we estimate it will feel. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And let me ask you, do you like free swag? That's a silly question. Of course you like free swag. Everybody likes free swag. A free thing? Sure. Who doesn't? Well, I want to send you, yes, you, a free Destination Manifestation baseball cap. You know I'm the queen of wearing a baseball cap, right? I don't have one on right now, but usually I do. And the only thing I ask in return is that you leave an honest review to the Destination Manifestation podcast here. Take a screenshot of it and send it my way before you submit it so that I know that it's you. And that's it. Because reviews are so helpful. They help other people find the show, which is amazing because that essentially means that you're helping other people manifest their dreams. Then it just results in this really beautiful big butterfly effect that results actually in a super cool baseball cap that you will now own. So be sure to DM me your screenshot. You can go to my website and email it to me. All the links are in my bio and I'll get that sent your way. All music for this podcast is by A-Cubed. And remember, you can and you will.
I don't know the way for me to coexist.